I can't believe it, but Stephen Miller blinked. Have you guys ever seen Stephen Miller blink? Now, I haven't seen Stephen Miller blink for two reasons. Number one, he's probably a lizard. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason is because this dude does not have any quit in him. He doesn't back down. When he grabs onto something, he holds on to it like a rabid dog. He just does not let go. And that's how he's able to latch on to Trump and stay as a consistent voice in his ear. He is very good at maneuvering around the man. I don't think he's going to have much of a political career in the executive branch post the Trump administration, because I don't know, unless, you know, Trump's children take the reins somehow, and I don't think any of them have the skills to really make it big in electoral politics. I think that he's probably trying to do as much as he can in a short period of time, because he probably knows the likelihood of him getting another chance. The fact that he's in the White House again after Trump got a second term is already a miracle from his perspective, likely. So he's trying to use this time wisely. The reason that we have such harsh quotas when it comes to deportations in the Twin Cities and these other locations, they're not even big spots of undocumented migration or anything, is because of Stephen Miller. He wants to do as much as fast as possible. That's how he went from judicially mandated house raids to administrative warrants. That's how he went from identifying oneself to not identifying oneself. That's how he went from targeted raids to just wandering outside of Home Depot. That's how he went from, excuse me, we have belief to believe that you're undocumented to, let me listen to your accent. Stephen Miller is the powering force behind that, because he knows that if you can skip all of these checks and balances, if you can skip the usual protections that would be given to suspects, then you can speed up this whole process a lot quicker, not only for the entirety of the Trump term, but for the 2 years that they know that they're going to have the House, the 1 year that just passed and the 1 year that we're in right now, because the midterms are not looking predictively good out from now. Like, if you look into the distance, the odds aren't in their favor. Not in their favor. Well, Stephen Miller has blinked for the first time, and he has suggested that those who killed Alex Prentis may have not been following protocol. How you go from Alex Prentis was there to assassinate and massacre those people there, or those officers, and that he's a domestic terrorist, which is the line that he tried to get Kristi Noem to say, that he was sharing around. How you go from that, and he says he took that from the CBD on the line. You go from the CPP officers on the line, on the ground. How you go from that to, well, yeah, I think, we may have made a mistake. That's quite a shift. That's quite a shift in a very, very, very short period of time. An extraordinarily short period of time. Now, that's probably because Donald Trump's not happy. And when Donald Trump's not happy, people start to move in the administration. That seems to be the consistent basis by which people move in the administration. Now, Trump saw Bovino on CNN and all these other interviews where people were being asked questions that they just could not give direct answers to, that were getting repeated again and again and again, and they were unable to answer them. They saw when they were asking for evidence of brandishing, he would say, oh, well, we got reports of brandishing, but also if you ask me any more specific questions, I'll say we're still investigating. But we might still be investigating, but it may be a massacre. We might still be investigating, but he was brandishing. But if you want to ask me to provide evidence of he was brandishing, you got to understand that we're still investigating. It did not look like it could stand up to the slightest of scrutiny. Okay? You could get Dora the Explorer on this case. She'd have it done in a second. You could get the most second-rate detective on the planet. They're going to figure this out, okay? You don't need to be a crossword puzzle expert. You don't need to be some LA Noire-style detective. You have video angles from every single perspective imaginable, okay? I mean, it got to the point where every day I'm expecting another angle to come out. So not only were they wrong, they were historically wrong. They had all the evidence against it. And the issue that they started trudging into to try to save themselves was going after the ability and right of protesters to go out and actually have guns at protests, after defending people like Kyle Rittenhouse for blowing away people at a protest for years, saying, well, they were violent towards him, so of course he's allowed to shoot. Why did he have a gun there in the first place? Because he had a right to have one. So he doesn't have to have a reason to have one. You're an American citizen. But when it comes to this man walking in his own town, it's a little different. The scenes change. And that's how you got Kash Patel, the FBI director, who hands out Punisher coins. I don't know if you've seen them, but you know how people have like different like coins as little monument coins that you hand out. It would say like Department of Treasury, and you'd be like, oh, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. His is shaped like the Punisher, right? So he's a real challenger to authority. We call for justice over legalese. We will rigorously pursue and defend the Constitution. Our challenge coin is for freedom. Well, he was out there arguing that you just can't take a gun to a protest. Leave it in your safe at home.
As Christie said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country, in these protests turning into violent scenarios and people attacking law enforcement. That's when you go over the line, and that's when law enforcement.
So that's the position of the administration for its defense. It's not going to work. That's something that could probably upset the base more than previous. I mean, you gotta go Jeffrey Epstein, screw the base. Second Amendment, screw the base. I mean, I know they've done a lot of confrontations with the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, but I mean, right now it just feels like they're going through the amendments like a checklist. They're just going one after the other after the other. There has to be some sort of a limit, if not for the base, certainly for independents. And this one was a loser. When you polled independents, certainly when you polled Democrats, and even when you polled Republicans, there was something like 20 to 30% of Republicans who thought that the shooting of Alex Prentis was not justified, which might sound like not a lot. 70% to 80% think it was justified. That's crazy. But when you consider how large the independent margin was, overwhelming, and of course the Democrat margin, then you have got a vast majority of the public who thinks that the man should not have been shot. Going into a midterm this year where immigration was supposed to be one of his biggest winning issues, and he's now falling on immigration polling. And so Donald Trump's in a corner. He's losing on the economy to Democrats. He's barely ahead of them on the issue of law and order. And the more drug and weapon smugglers he pardons, the more fraudsters and white-collar criminals he gets out, the more crypto scammers that engages in business with his family that he allows to get out, the less I think the law and order label may apply. But of course, a lot of politics is aesthetics, and he really leans into that law and order aesthetic. But how much can an officer be shown to be deploying law and order if they're not acting lawfully and they're not bringing any order? Certainly not to Minneapolis. Trump's in a problem. His big issues, he's not polling well on. And on immigration, which was always supposed to be his bastion, he's falling. ICE, the organization which he's using to engage in these types of enforcement mechanisms, they're not in a good place in the public consciousness. So he has to change the conversation. And Trump is doing a few things to change the conversation. Number one, Bovino is out. He's been expelled from the kingdom. Okay, he's gone. He's not coming back for the next season. You know, he kind of just jumped on the scene and jumped out. Most people just learned his name, and now you're gonna unlearn his name. Okay, Bovino is out. He's no longer overseeing the operation after Donald Trump had a call with Tim Walz, seemingly trying to change the conversation. Tim Walz says that he expressed to Donald Trump that he wants less federal officers in the state, and that they're trying to coordinate on maybe going after the most violent, worst of the worst criminals, what Donald Trump actually, somewhat talked about on the campaign trail, versus this kind of catch-all going for everybody initiative that Bovino, Stephen Miller, and others in the administration have pushed up until now. Now, whether or not we're going to get those independent state-level investigations coordinated, whether or not we're going to get ICE officials and other federal officers to identify themselves with engaging in law enforcement, whether we're going to get the federal government to recognize the need for the judicial warrants when going in somebody's castle, when going in somebody's home, this is still up in the air. And that has left many progressives actually frustrated with Waltz as they think this change of tone when he was comparing what was going on to the story of Anne Frank like 3 or 4 days ago. And now he's having a casual conversation where he says Tom Homan, the border czar that Trump's sending in after Bovino, he says that, he has everybody's best interests in heart. He's talking him up as if he's, going to strive for something better. It'd be one thing for him to say, maybe we should give him a chance to, if you had some private agreement with Trump, to notch down to rhetoric, but to actively assert trust. To actively assert trust into Homan. Yeah, you're going to get your backlash. And I would even say some of it is warranted. Considering the man is not running again, I don't know why he would be reeling into rhetoric for his own political purposes. So you have to assume he thinks he's reeling in the rhetoric for either his own legacy or state stability, the city stability, or trying to get some concession from Donald Trump, knowing that the midterms are 10 months away and the elections are 3 years away. And by the time that election happens, he won't be governor anymore anyway. Either way, I don't think this is done. I think Stephen Miller has taken his most significant step back. Right now, Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem seem to be in a he said, she said. She's the reason she kind of butchered this delivery. Well, Kristi Noem is saying she just did whatever Stephen Miller told her to. Now, Stephen Miller shouldn't be above a cabinet secretary, by the way. But Kristi Noem was saying that the problem was Stephen Miller. Now, again, Stephen Miller ranks lower technically as an advisor to the president than Kristi Noem. She's a cabinet secretary, but realistically, in reality, Stephen Miller is a closer confidant to the president of the United States than Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem is while Stephen Miller is largely revolting to a lot of people, he's not revolting to Trump. Trump trusts his judgment, and Trump does not think that Kristi Noem has handled her time in the spotlight particularly well. And I don't think she's also handled emergency response particularly well. And so she has given more complaints for the presidential administration. So I think the president probably is more annoyed with Kristi Noem than Stephen Miller right now. I think it's not that likely that Stephen Miller is going to get the boot. I think Stephen Miller is probably going to be with Trump till the end of this administration. Many are saying that one of the compromises that Democrats might be asking for in order to get a government funding bill through is Stephen Miller's removal. I don't know if they're going to make that request. I doubt they're going to make that request because I don't think that's a request that could be fulfilled likely. I just don't think Trump is going to get rid of Stephen. He's kept him for so long. I think he's going to continue to keep him. So this blame game, according to Kristi Noem, was Stephen Miller told her to use the words like massacre and domestic terrorist, and that they were going through the motions like they usually do, that when one of these people are shot, you want to get out ahead of the story, define them as a terrorist, and then it's much easier to justify your actions if the person who died was Osama bin Laden and not a nurse or some other three or something that's a lot more humanizing, something that's a lot more, wait, I know people like that, something that's a lot more, oh, that's terrible, and not good riddance, which is what we all felt when Osama got shot. It allows them to justify it without actually justifying how they're a terrorist, proving that they're a terrorist. Problem was the footage was too overwhelming. The potentially deadly weapon stayed in his holster until an officer removed it. What they said about him brandishing a weapon and assaulting officers, and then he wanted to massacre officers. It was so disconnected. So disconnected from reality. To the point where it became too big of a backlash for them to handle. So the blame game from Kristi is going towards Stephen, who told her to use said rhetoric, and that rhetoric then extended to Bovino and to the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, and to others. As well as even the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, who was retweeting Stephen Miller's message saying that Alex Prentis was trying to assassinate federal law enforcement officials. So really, if the blame is directed towards Kristi Noem or Stephen Miller, it should be probably directed towards the entire administration that signal boosted that message and didn't take a moment to say, excuse me, This seems like a train wreck waiting to happen. Shouldn't we at least see the body cam footage before we declare this man an assassin? Especially when the footage, if anyone looks like they're being assassinated, it looks like the man in question. Not a very smart election strategy or political strategy to bring as much attention to videos as possible that immediately disprove what you were saying to get attention to said videos. Of course, at that moment, they didn't know all the videos that would come out, but that's besides the point. They should assume that those videos are going to come out, especially as local officials are constantly encouraging their constituents, take out your phones and your whistles. That's what you got, okay? You can't interfere. You can't assault the officers. Tim Walz has been clear about that. The mayor, Jacob Fry, has been clear about that. But you can record with your phones. And yet the one thing that they've been so consistent, that is the one way that everybody in Minneapolis certainly has the constitutional right to resist as while not interfering, is the one thing they always just don't account for when giving these descriptions of events. And so then they have to play the blame game for all of their implicit actions that have led to this spiral where every single person who gets shot by a federal official has to be Osama bin Laden. Osama bin MS-13. Do 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 do.